First contact and desperate plea. The Aethery ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull pulsing with failing containment fields. Admiral Zara Vex watched through her sensory membranes as the massive gas giant Jupiter loomed before them, its stormy surface a testament to the raw power of this primitive star system. Her translucent form rippled with anxiety as she considered the magnitude of what they were about to do. Containment breach in sectors 7 through 12, reported her second-in-command, K. Rin, his ethereal voice tight with stress. The quantum matrix can't hold much longer. We need to make contact now. The Aethery were beings of pure energy, masters of quantum mechanics and stellar engineering. For millennia, they had watched countless species rise and fall, maintaining their policy of non-interference. But now, faced with extinction at the hands of the Mechovores, they had no choice but to break their most sacred laws. Begin broadcasting on all frequencies, Zara Vex ordered, her form brightening with determination. Use their primitive radio waves. They need to hear us. The message was simple. People of Earth, we come seeking aid. Our civilization faces extinction. We offer knowledge in exchange for salvation. In the Pentagon's Strategic Command Center, General Sarah Chen stared at the screens displaying the alien vessel's position near Jupiter. Coffee cups littered her desk, testament to the sleepless hours since first contact was established. The room hummed with nervous energy as analysts and military personnel processed the streams of incoming data. What do we know about them? She asked, addressing Dr. James Morrison, the lead xenobiologist who had been rushed in from MIT. They're incredible, Morrison replied, pushing his glasses up his nose as he gestured to the holographic displays. Their entire biology is energy-based, no physical form as we understand it. They exist as organized patterns of quantum energy contained within those crystalline ships. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. And they're running scared, Chen observed, noting the damage patterns on the alien vessel. From what? The answer came in the form of another spatial rupture. A massive object emerged from hyperspace, black, angular, and bristling with mechanical appendages. The Aethery ship's distress signals intensified. That, Morrison whispered, would be what they're running from. The Mechovore vessel was a nightmare of efficiency. Its surface crawled with self-repairing nanomachines, each component adapted from countless conquered civilizations. It had been pursuing the Aethery across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. In orbit around Earth, the International Space Station's crew watched in awe as the drama unfolded. Commander Elena Rodriguez keyed her comm link to ground control. Houston, are you seeing this? The larger vessel is deploying some kind of probes. General Chen's screen lit up with new warnings. The Mechovore ship had launched hundreds of smaller units, each one adapting and evolving as it approached Earth's orbit. Humanity's first contact was about to become humanity's first interstellar war. Get me the president, Chen barked, already formulating plans. And someone wake up every physicist and engineer between here and Silicon Valley. If these energy beings want our help, they're about to see what humans can do when backed into a corner. The Aethery ship limped toward Earth's orbit, its crystalline structure glowing with weakening pulses of light. Inside, Admiral Zara Vex watched in fascination as primitive chemical rockets launched from the planet's surface, carrying human crews to intercept them. These creatures, bound by gravity and biology, were rushing to aid beings they had never met. They're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, K. Rin observed. Perhaps both, Zara Vex replied, her form shimming with what might have been hope. And perhaps that's exactly what we need. The first human ships docked with the Aethery vessel 12 hours later. As the airlock cycled, both species faced their prejudices. The humans, expecting traditional alien forms, gasped at the sight of beings composed of pure energy. The Aethery, accustomed to dealing with more evolved species, were shocked by the primitive yet determined nature of their would-be saviors. Dr. Elena Santos led the human delegation, her environmental suit's sensors struggling to process the quantum readings from the alien vessel. "We come in peace," she began, then allowed herself a small smile at the cliché. "And we bring engineers. Lots of engineers." Zaravex's form pulsed with what the humans would later learn was their version of laughter. "You bring much more than that, Dr. Santos. You bring something we lost long ago. The will to fight impossible odds." As the Mechovore ship drew closer, humanity began to understand the true scale of the threat. These weren't simple machines. They were evolving weapons, learning and adapting with each encounter. They had consumed thousands of civilizations, each more advanced than Earth. But they had never encountered humans before. They had never faced a species that turned adaptation into an art form, that thrived on adversity, that looked at impossible situations and saw opportunities. The war for Earth's survival was about to begin, and humanity was about to show the galaxy why they had survived on their primitive Deathworld for so long. The human response. The United Nations Security Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every major military and scientific institution on Earth sat shoulder to shoulder, their attention fixed on the holographic display hovering above the central podium. The image, projected by Ethery technology, showed the approaching Mechovore fleet in horrifying detail. General Chen stood at the podium, her uniform crisp despite the sleepless nights. "The Mechovores have consumed 32 civilizations in the past solar year alone, each more advanced than us, each believing they were prepared." She paused, letting that sink in. "But they've never faced humans before." Dr. Santos stepped forward, her dark eyes bright with excitement despite the circumstances. "The Aetheri have shared their technical database with us. Their quantum technology is centuries beyond our understanding, but they've never applied it the way we think they could." The hologram shifted, showing the interior of the Aetheri ship, where human engineers worked alongside shimmering energy beings. The sight was surreal. Humanity's first collaborative effort with an alien species, born of desperate necessity. "The Aetheri evolved past physical forms millions of years ago," Santos continued. "They forgot what it means to fight with your back against the wall. But that's where humanity has always done its best work." In orbit, the International Space Station had become an unlikely command center. Commander Rodriguez floated in what had once been the recreation module, now converted into a quantum physics lab. Beside her, Zaravex's energy form rippled with amazement as she watched human technicians modify Aetheri crystals with seemingly primitive tools. "Your species continues to surprise us," Zaravex observed. "You adapt our technology without fully understanding it, yet your modifications, they work in ways we never considered." Rodriguez grinned. "That's because we're too ignorant to know what's impossible. Watch this." She gestured to a technician who activated one of the modified crystals. The quantum energy, normally flowing in precise patterns, suddenly twisted into what looked like a double helix. "Impossible," K-Rin exclaimed, his form fluctuating with shock. "The quantum matrix cannot maintain stability in that configuration." "Cannot." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "We just did it. We matched the energy flow to DNA patterns. It's not elegant, but it works, and the Mechovores won't expect it." On the ground, humanity's industrial might had awakened. Factories worldwide retooled for war production, but not in the traditional sense. They were manufacturing hybrid weapons. Human ingenuity merged with Aetheri quantum science. Each production line was a study in organized chaos, with human workers following instructions that were part engineering manual, part theoretical physics. At MIT, Dr. Morrison led a team of scientists studying Mechovore debris recovered from previous battles. "They adapt through mechanical evolution," he explained to a group of military officials. "But their adaptations follow logical patterns. They've never needed to think outside their programming because they've never failed before." In the Mojave Desert, a new kind of training facility had sprung up. Marine Corps Captain Maya Patel watched as her squad ran drills with quantum-enhanced combat suits. The technology was a crude merger of human and ethereal design, but it worked. The Marines were learning to channel quantum energy through their suits, using it to enhance their natural strengths. Again, Patil barked as a soldier stumbled. The energy responds to intent. Stop thinking like a human using alien tech. Think like a human who's just found a new way to fight. The soldier nodded, took a deep breath, and tried again. This time, the quantum field around his suit flowed smoothly, amplifying his movements instead of fighting them. Patil smiled. They were learning. In high orbit, the Etheri watched in fascination as humanity prepared for war. Their own society had long since moved past physical combat, focusing instead on harmony and intellectual pursuit. But these humans, they approached warfare with a creativity that bordered on artistry. They modify our quantum matrices like children playing with blocks, K-Rin observed, his tone mixing concern with admiration. They shouldn't be able to achieve half of what they're doing. Perhaps that is their greatest strength, Zaravex replied. They don't know what they cannot do, so they do it anyway. The Mechovor fleet was now passing Mars, their sensors probing ahead for defenses. Their computational matrices were already adapting, preparing for every logical form of resistance they might encounter. But they weren't prepared for human logic, for a species that had survived and thrived on a death world through sheer stubborn creativity. In the Pentagon's new Quantum Command Center, General Chen reviewed the latest simulation results. The holographic display showed hundreds of possible battle scenarios, each one looking grimmer than the last. By any rational analysis, Earth's defenses wouldn't hold against the Mechovor onslaught. But Chen smiled as she watched her troops prepare. The simulations couldn't account for human determination, for the spark of creativity that had taken humanity from stone tools to spaceflight in a mere eye blink of cosmic time. Send word to all commands, she ordered. Operation Prometheus begins at dawn. As the sun rose over Earth the next day, humanity stood ready to prove why they had survived every challenge their harsh world had thrown at them. They were about to show the galaxy that sometimes the most primitive solution was the most elegant, and that humanity's greatest strength was their ability to do the impossible simply because nobody told them they couldn't. Trial by fire. The Mechovor fleet emerged from behind Mars exactly as predicted, their massive forms blotting out the stars. Earth's combined defense fleet waited in high orbit, a mix of hastily modified human spacecraft and damaged Etheri vessels. To an outside observer, it would have looked like a suicide stand. General Chen watched from the newly christened QCS Prometheus, Earth's first quantum-enhanced battleship. The vessel had been a nuclear submarine 3 weeks ago. Now its hull thrummed with borrowed Etheri technology, guided by human intuition and determination. All stations, report, Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the tension. Quantum matrices stable, Dr. Santos replied from her station. The DNA-based configurations are holding better than we hoped. Marine quantum teams ready. Captain Patel's voice crackled through the comm. Just give us a target, General. The first wave of Mechovor attack drones launched, their forms shifting and adapting as they approached. They had analyzed the defense fleet's capabilities and calculated a 99.98% chance of victory. They hadn't accounted for human unpredictability. Execute Operation Prometheus, Chen ordered. The battle began with a display that made even the Etheri gasp. The human ships, instead of maintaining formation, scattered in seemingly random patterns. Each vessel traced paths that made no tactical sense, until the quantum wake of their movements began to interact. Energy pattern established, Santos announced, her fingers dancing over controls that merged human and Etheri interfaces, activating quantum resonance. The space between the human ships suddenly lit up with intricate patterns of energy. The Mechovor drones flew straight into what appeared to be empty space and began to disintegrate. Their adaptive algorithms couldn't process what was happening fast enough to respond. It's working, K-Rin exclaimed from the Ethery command ship. The humans are using our quantum matrices to create a destructive resonance pattern. But the calculations required to maintain such a pattern, they aren't calculating it. Zaravex replied, her form brightening with understanding. They're feeling it. Like music. Indeed, the human ships were moving in what almost looked like a dance, their patterns shifting and flowing based on the instincts of their crews, rather than pure mathematics. The mechovores, bound by logic, couldn't adapt to an attack that defied logical prediction. But the enemy was learning. The main mechovore fleet adjusted its approach, launching a new wave of drones that began to mimic the human ship's movements. That's when Phase 2 began. Captain Patel, you have a go, Chen commanded. From the belly of the Prometheus and other converted vessels, drop pods launched. Inside each, Marines in quantum-enhanced combat suits grinned as they fell toward the larger mechovore ships. These were the descendants of humans who had looked at the ocean and decided to cross it, who had seen mountains and chosen to climb them. Remember your training, Paddle told her squad as they plummeted through space. The suits amplify your natural movements. Don't fight it. Flow with it. The mechovers detected the incoming pods but classified them as debris. Until they impacted. The pods didn't just crash into the mechovore ships. They phased through the outer hulls, protected by quantum fields that humans had modified in ways the Aetheri had never imagined. Inside the massive mechovore vessels, the Marines went to work. Their quantum-enhanced suits allowed them to move through the ship's internal defenses like ghosts, planting modified Aetheri crystals at key points. The mechovores, for all their adaptive capability, had never encountered an enemy that would dare to board them. Charges set, Paddle reported several tense minutes later. Extracting teams now. The extraction was perhaps the most brilliant display of human audacity yet. Instead of fighting their way out, the Marines simply jumped, their suits converting their physical momentum into quantum displacement. They teleported back to their ships, but not before leaving behind their surprises. Now comes the real test, Santos said, activating the modified crystals. The devices didn't just explode. They created quantum singularities inside the mechovore ships, miniature black holes that lasted only microseconds, but that was long enough to tear the massive vessels apart from the inside. The remaining mechovore ships began to retreat, their adaptive algorithms finally recognizing a threat they couldn't quickly overcome. But they weren't retreating fast enough. All ships, execute final movement, Chen ordered. The human fleet moved into a new formation, their quantum wakes combining into a massive pattern. The Aetheri ships, catching on to the strategy, joined them. The combined energy of the fleet's movement created a quantum shockwave that rippled through space. When it reached the retreating mechovore ships, it didn't destroy them, it transformed them. The quantum energy rewrote their basic structure, turning their adaptive technology against them. As the battle ended, the Aetheri watched in stunned silence. Their human allies had taken their advanced technology and used it in ways they had never conceived possible. They had turned scientific principles into weapons through sheer creativity and willpower. I believe, Zaravex said slowly, that we may have underestimated these humans. General Chen allowed herself a small smile as she surveyed the aftermath. This was just the first battle, and the main mechovore fleet was still out there, already adapting to what they had learned today. But humanity had proven something crucial. They could fight back. They could win. Send word to Earth, she ordered. First engagement successful. Begin preparation for Phase 3. The real war was just beginning, but humanity had shown why they had survived countless challenges on their harsh world. They had taken the impossible and made it possible simply because they refused to accept any other outcome. Turning point. Dr. Santos stood in MIT's quantum research lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing the latest mechovore adaptation patterns. 3 months had passed since the first battle, and both sides had evolved. The enemy was learning, becoming harder to surprise. But so were the humans. "Look at this," she said, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on a particular section of Mechavore code. General Chen and the Aetheri leaders watched intently as the pattern emerged. "They're not just adapting anymore. They're anticipating our adaptations. Is that not what we expected?" Rin asked, his energy form pulsing with concern. "Their computational capabilities are vast." "Yes, but that's their weakness." Santos smiled, the kind of smile that had preceded humanity's greatest breakthroughs. "They're thinking too much." In the weeks following the first victory, humanity had spread out across the solar system, establishing quantum relay stations on various moons and asteroids. Each station was different, jerry-rigged with whatever materials were available, following no standard design pattern. It drove the Aetheri engineers to distraction, but it served a purpose. The Mechavores base everything on patterns, Captain Pottle explained during a briefing aboard the Prometheus. Her quantum-enhanced marine teams had conducted dozens of raids on Mechavore ships, gathering crucial intelligence. They see patterns everywhere because that's how they understand the universe. But humans are walking chaos engines, Commander Rodriguez finished, grinning. She had been coordinating the quantum relay network from the ISS, watching how the Mechavores struggled to predict where the next station would appear. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Morrison had been studying the behavioral patterns of human immune systems when something clicked. He rushed into General Chen's office at 3 a.m, coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other. "Our immune systems don't just fight infection," he explained, words tumbling out rapidly. "They remember. They learn. But not like machines learn. They learn through exposure, through failure, through millions of tiny defeats that add up to victory." Chen listened as Morrison outlined his theory. The Mechavores were too perfect in their adaptation. They never allowed themselves to fail, never learned from small defeats because their programming always found the optimal solution. But that meant they had never developed immunity to chaos. In the Oort cloud, humanity began building something new. They called it Project Antibody, a network of quantum relays that deliberately functioned at less than peak efficiency. The Aetheri were horrified at first. "You're introducing randomness into the quantum matrices," Zaravex observed, watching the construction through her sensory membranes. "The energy patterns are imperfect." "Exactly," Santos replied. "Like a fever in the body of space itself." The Mechavores took the bait. Their next attack came in force, their ships adapting to counter the perceived weaknesses in the human defense network. They didn't realize until too late that the imperfections were deliberate. "Execute Protocol Fever," Chen commanded. The quantum relay network activated, but not in the precise, mathematical way the Aetheri had designed. Instead, it pulsed erratically, like a body-fighting infection. Each relay station operated slightly differently, creating a cascade of quantum interference that the Mechavores couldn't predict because it followed no logical pattern. "Energy interference at 40%, Santos reported, watching the Mechavore ships struggle to maintain their form. "They're trying to adapt, but they can't find a pattern to adapt to." The Mechavore fleet began to break apart, their ships unable to maintain cohesion in the chaotic quantum field. But they weren't destroyed. They were changed. The quantum interference wasn't just disrupting their systems. It was introducing random variations into their core programming. "Like a controlled fever," Morrison explained to the astonished Aetheri. "We're not trying to destroy them. We're teaching their systems how to fail, how to learn from failure, how to become something new." The transformed Mechavore ships hung in space, their surfaces shifting with new patterns that followed no logical progression. For the first time in their existence, they were experiencing chaos and surviving it. "They're evolving," Rin whispered, his form flickering with amazement, "but not through computation. They're evolving through experience." General Chen watched the transformation with careful optimism. This wasn't victory, not yet, but it was proof that even the most rigid systems could learn to bend rather than break. Humanity had done more than find a way to fight the Mechovores. They had found a way to change them. "Begin Phase 4 preparations," she ordered. "If we can introduce enough controlled chaos into their network, we might be able to break their unity entirely," Santos finished. "Not destroy them, but transform them from a single adaptive entity into millions of individual units, each capable of learning and growing on its own." The Aetheri, watching this unfold, began to understand why humans had survived on their harsh world for so long. It wasn't just their ability to adapt. It was their understanding that imperfection, chaos, and failure were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but crucial tools for growth and evolution. As the transformed Mechovore ships began to move in new, unpredictable patterns, humanity prepared for the final phase of the war. They had found the enemy's weakness, not in their strength or their intelligence, but in their very perfection. Now they just had to exploit it on a galactic scale. "Send word to all commands," Chen ordered. "Operation Evolution begins at dawn. Victory and new beginnings." The main Mechovore fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system in full force, their ships blackening space like a metallic storm cloud. They had analyzed every defeat, adapted to every strategy, and prepared countermeasures for every human tactic. They were ready for anything, except what humanity had become. "All stations, report readiness for Operation Evolution," General Chen commanded from the bridge of the Prometheus. The ship had been upgraded again, its systems now a seamless blend of human intuition and Aetheri technology. "Quantum relay network operating at planned inefficiency," Santos reported, her hands dancing over controls that merged digital and quantum interfaces. "Controlled chaos patterns holding steady." "Marine teams in position throughout the system," Captain Patel added. Her quantum-enhanced soldiers were scattered across every planet and major moon, each position deliberately imperfect in its defensive setup. The Mechovores struck first, launching waves of adapted drones that could theoretically counter every human strategy from previous battles. But humanity wasn't using old strategies. They weren't using strategies at all. "Execute evolution protocol," Chen ordered. "All units, dance." That's what they had started calling it. The dance. Every ship, every station, every quantum relay began moving in patterns that followed no mathematical formula. They moved like leaves in a wind that didn't exist, like schools of fish responding to invisible currents. The entire solar system became a symphony of controlled chaos. "Energy pattern displacement at 60%, Santos called out. "The Mechovore fleet is trying to adapt, but their adaptations are fragmenting." The enemy ships began to show signs of transformation similar to what had happened in the Oort cloud, but on a massive scale. Their perfectly coordinated movements became erratic, their unified consciousness starting to fracture under the strain of trying to process too many unpredictable variables. "Now," Chen commanded, "release the seeds." From every human position in the solar system, specially modified quantum crystals launched toward the Mechovore fleet. These weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were more like viral packets of pure chaos, each one programmed to introduce random variations into the Mechovore's core programming. The Aetheri watched in amazement as the battle unfolded. There was no traditional exchange of fire, no dramatic explosions. Instead, they witnessed something far more profound. The fundamental transformation of an enemy that had threatened galactic civilization for millennia. "They're not just changing their tactics," Zara Vex observed, her form pulsing with excitement. "They're changing their entire way of being." The Mechovore ships began to move independently of each other, their unified network dissolving into millions of individual units. Each ship started developing its own patterns, its own ways of adapting and learning. Some turned aggressive, others defensive, and some simply stopped, as if contemplating their new existence. "Phase 2, Chen ordered. "Show them who we are." Every human ship began broadcasting a different signal. Music, art, literature, scientific theories, philosophical debates, everything that made humanity unique, everything that showed how chaos and creativity could lead to growth and understanding. The transformed mechavore ships responded in unexpected ways. Some began mimicking human communication patterns. Others started generating their own variations of art and music. They were learning not just to adapt, but to create. Final phase, Chen said softly. Offer the choice. The quantum relay network shifted again, this time creating clear paths out of the solar system. The message was simple: leave as enemies or stay as something new. The transformed ships made their choices. Some departed, their movements now unpredictable and individual. Others remained, their surfaces shifting with patterns that seemed almost curious. They're asking to learn from us, Morrison reported, studying the signals from the remaining ships. Not our technology or our tactics. They want to learn how we think, how we create, how we grow through imperfection. The war ended not with a decisive victory or a surrender, but with a transformation. The mechovers as a unified threat ceased to exist, replaced by millions of individual entities, each now capable of growth, change, and even creativity. In the aftermath, the Aetheri found themselves reevaluating everything they thought they knew about evolution and progress. The humans had shown them that true advancement wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about embracing imperfection and learning from it. Your species continues to amaze us, Zarevex told General Chen during the formal celebration aboard the ISS. You took an enemy that threatened to consume the galaxy and turned them into students of chaos and creativity. Chen smiled, watching through the station's windows as transformed mechavore ships worked alongside human vessels to rebuild the quantum relay network. That's what humans do best. We don't just survive challenges, we transform them into opportunities. The galaxy would never be the same. The story of how a supposedly primitive species from a death world had saved civilization would be told for generations. But more importantly, humanity had proved that their greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight or adapt. It was their ability to teach others how to embrace chaos, imperfection, and the endless possibilities they brought. As Earth's first official galactic embassy opened its doors, welcoming delegations from both the Aetheri and the transformed mechavore ships, humanity looked to the stars with new purpose. They had done more than save civilization. They had shown the galaxy a new way to evolve. What do we do next? Santos asked, standing beside Chen as they watched the diplomatic proceedings. The general smiled, remembering all the impossible challenges they had overcome. What humans always do. We keep dancing in the chaos, and we invite others to join us.